and welcome to the Holon Network podcast for February 9th of 2023. This week I have joining me,
Hey, I'm Digital Tinker.
and I'm Gatorbite. Yo, Digital, how is it going this week, my friend?
Little nuts, getting ready to move to a new apartment.
Nice, congratulations. I imagine there's lots of packing and trying to label things and get things all set and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to make sure all the projects go in one place, so whenever it gets moved, I know exactly where they're at to try and get restarted.
Oh man, I know that story from about this time last year as well. So, congratulations, man. That's pretty exciting. Work been fairly straightforward for you?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. We haven't had too much going on, which is surprising, but that's how cybersecurity goes. Sometimes everything's blowing up, and other times there's nothing there
Right.
yet.
That's the truth of it, for sure. So, on my side of the house, I was able to go for work to a big get together with a bunch of the Red Hat TAMs, which is pretty awesome. Had the opportunity to go to Dallas, Texas from Tuesday to Friday, uh, right when the blizzard was going on. So that caused all sorts of fun for travel. Um, got a couple of videos about that made, which was absolutely nuts. After starting our travel at 3 o'clock in the morning, arriving in Vegas 2 hours ahead of time for our flight. Our flight got canceled and then bumped 9 times to where we finally got to fly out at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And when we're talking about bumping, they bumped it every 45 minutes, so it's not like you could just maybe go get something to eat, maybe go get a show and then come back. No, you need to be there every 45 minutes because they either change gates or change the takeoff time. So once we finally got there, it was wild because, yeah, they just weren't quite set up for a blizzard like that. So everything was shut down when we landed. Took us an hour and a half to get an Uber. Um, Thing is, once we got it was actually a Lyft, but once we got the Lyft, the guy knew how to drive in the blizzard. He came from Minnesota and was just owning the road. Uh, got us to our hotel safely. Got to meet a whole bunch of other coworkers that I've only seen online, which was awesome to see in person. I've been fairly careful, including when we were at DEF CON for COVID still, because of my little one has got some health issues. So, immunocompromised system. And so testing every day, every morning, making sure I'm clean, we're good to go. Everything's great. Squatchy Foot and I get ready to come back home. We have a couple slight delays, but not a huge deal. We finally land back in Vegas to start our trek home, and he and I have both got like some drainage going on. Okay, maybe we're just coming back into the valley. We stop by the Mad Greek. We get some food, and we're like, yeah, so I've got this drainage going on just to be aware. So, okay, well, I appreciate it. We'll just both watch it. Get back to our houses, and then I test, and I freaking come down with COVID for the first time in the last 3 years. Like, oh.
You had a good run.
I had a damn good run. This time, again, just like at DEF CON, I wasn't wearing I was only taking off my mask to eat and drink. So instead of doing the pro filter, like what you and I both picked up for DEF CON, I ended up doing the KN95 masks the entire time, which did hell on my ears, but I thought, okay, let's give it a try. Well, DEF CON compared to what I just did at this work conference, I'm going to say the pro filter did a hell of a lot better job because
And
I didn't
head
come
was probably
down.
a lot more comfortable.
Oh, yes. It was a hell of a lot more comfortable. So, yeah. Now I'm just quarantining up in my office, away from my wife and kids. I can hear them, but I can't see them until I'm clean with it. So, called out of work for a few days. This is the first day I've gone back to work remotely, and I feels like my heads aren't in the clouds anymore, which is great. It was just sore and super achy, man, which was weird.
Mm-hmm.
So never got the cough like other folks did, which I'm thankful for. So Now I'm just waiting to get a clean bill of health from the tests, plus 48 hours, is what the current CDC site is saying. Um,
Hmm.
so hopefully I'll get to see my wife and kids sometime soon within the next 2 weeks of being away from them. So yeah, yeah. Last day or two, trying not to go too stir crazy, just from staying in the small room. So I think tomorrow I'm gonna be sitting out on the balcony, getting some fresh air and working outside. Walk myself outside. So, anyways, lots of fun stuff going on there. But 3-year run, not bad. All right, we ready to jump into tonight's stories?
Sure.
Cool deal. As always, let's start things off with the current price of Bitcoin is $21,875.66. Gold per ounce is $1,868.80. Oil per barrel is $77.75. Dogecoin is 0.08183, as it's literally flexing back and forth while we're streaming. Gotta love it. All right. So let's go into the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's 2023's bulletins for this year. It looks like we've got the week of January 30th is the latest one that they've got currently. Were there any high vulnerabilities that grabbed your attention?
If you're using a QNAP with QTS, there's a vulnerability that, if exploited, allows remote attackers to inject malicious code. They've already fixed the vulnerability in the following version of QUTS Hero. QTS Hero H5.0.1.2248, build 2022-12-15 and later, and QTS 5.0.1.2234, build 2022-12-01 and later. That one is a 9.8 v 2022-27596.
Nice and high. There's a list of different high vulnerabilities, but I'm not recognizing any of these other pieces of software currently.
Nope.
Scrolling down a little bit then, that was actually a pretty short list for this time around. If we look at the NVD side of the house, if we look at the top 20 last scored here, looks like there is a CVE 2022-34138, an insecure direct object reference, or an IDOR, in the web server of the Biltema IP and baby camera software version 1.2.4, allows attackers to access sensitive information. CVSS score was a 7.5. Going down a little bit on that, there's also a CVE 2023-25139 with the Sprint F in GNU C library, or glibc. 2.37 has a buffer overflow out of right bounds. In some situations with the corrected buffer size, this is unrelated to the CWE 676 and may write beyond the bounds of the destination buffer when attempting to write. CVSS score of a 9.8. Following up with that, there. Go ahead.
CV 2023-25136, Open SSH Server 9.1 introduced a double free vulnerability during options.kex_algorithms handling. This is fixed in OpenSSH 9.2. The double free can be triggered by an unauthenticated attacker in the default configuration. That one is a 9.8, so make sure your SSH is up to date.
Definitely so. Scrolling down a little bit. Let's see if we got any other criticals. Ooh, this one's an older one. But CVE 2014 125043, a vulnerability which a classified as problematic has been found in the Macio Network Manager. Affecting this issue is the function send arps from the file src/devices/nm-devices.c. Manipulation leads to an unchecked return value. This is a CVSS severity of a 9.8. Looks like we've got two older CVEs that have also been identified recently. CVE 2021 36434 with a SQL injection vulnerability, and JCMS 0.8 allows remote attackers to run arbitrary SQL commands to view sensitive information via Joe underscore JSON underscore check functions and the Joe CMS apps mask inc get mask PHP. This is a 9.1 criticality. To follow up with that, there's a second one with a CVE 2021 36431, saying that it can also execute arbitrary commands and view sensitive information. And that is also a 9.1 on the critical side. All right. As always, you can always also go check out the osv.dev list for up to hourly updates of different vulnerabilities found. But past that, you ready to jump into our first vulnerability story for this week?
Sure.
All right. From the Hacker News, there is a article on February 9th stating critical infrastructure at risk from new vulnerabilities found in wireless IIoT devices. A set of 38 security vulnerabilities have been discovered in wireless industrial Internet of Things devices, or IIoT devices, from 4 different vendors that could pose a significant attack surface for threat actors looking to exploit operational technology environments. Threat actors can exploit vulnerabilities in wireless IIoT devices to gain initial access to internal OT networks. Israeli industrial cybersecurity company Otoro Rio. I'm not even. Yeah, sure. We're gonna go roll with that one. They said that these vulnerabilities can bypass security layers and infiltrate target networks, putting critical infrastructure at the risk or interrupting manufacturing. The flaws, in a nutshell, offer a remote entry point for attack, enabling unauthenticated adversaries to gain a foothold and subsequently use it as a leverage to spread to other hosts, thereby causing significant damage. Some of the identified shortcomings could be changed to give an external actor direct access to thousands of internal OT networks over the internet, security researcher says. Of the 38 defects, 3 affects the ETIC Telecom's Remote Access Server, or RAS. CVE 2022-3703, 2022-41607, and 2022-40981 could be abused to completely seize control of susceptible devices. 5 other vulnerabilities concerned in-hand networks in router 302 and in routers 615s that, if exploited, could result in command injection, information disclosure, and code execution. Specifically, it entails taking advantage of the issues in the device manager cloud platform, which permits operators to perform remote actions like configuration changes and firmware upgrades to compromise every cloud-managed in-router device with root privileges. Also identified in 2 weaknesses is the Sierra Wireless AirLink router, CVE 2022-46649 and CVE 2022-46650, that could allow loss of sensitive information and remote code execution. The remaining flaws are still under responsible disclosure. The findings underscores how OT networks could put at risk making IIoT devices directly accessible on the internet, effectively creating a single point of failure that can bypass all security protections. Alternatively, local attackers can break into the industrial Wi-Fi access points and cellular gateways by targeting an on-site Wi-Fi or cellular channels, leading to adversary in the middle (AITM) scenarios with adverse potential impact. All right, I'm going to jump out of the article for a second here. Have they just made up two new terms? An adversary in the middle has always been called man in the middle, right?
So that's the trying to reduce the gender stigma.
Okay. And then the second one was the IIoT. Uh, and wasn't that just a SCADA system versus industrial Internet of Things? And it seems like there might be a slight difference here, but interesting.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure on, but definitely seems like that might be a newer thing that is starting to be used more frequently.
Interesting. Okie dokie. Cool deal. All right, going back to the article, the assaults can range from targeting weak encryption schemes to coexistence attacks aimed at combo chips used widely in electronic devices. To pull this off, threat actors can utilize platforms like Wiggle. Hey, we love Wiggle, a database of different wireless hotspots worldwide, to identify how high value industrial environments, physically locate them, and exploit the access points from close proximity. As countermeasures, it is recommended to disable insecure encryption systems, hide Wi Fi network names, disable unused cloud management services, and take steps to prevent devices being publicly accessible. The low complexity of exploit combined with the broad potential impacts makes wireless IIoT devices and their cloud based management platforms an enticing target for attackers to look to breach industrial environments. The development also comes as Oroto disclosed details of two high severity flaws in Siemens' automated license manager, which is CVE 2022 43513 and CVE 2022 43514, that could be combined to gain remote code execution and privilege escalation. The bugs were patched by Siemens in January of 2023. All right, Digital, you got the next one?
Yep. Prilex POS malware evolves to block contactless payments to steal from NFC card. The Brazilian threat actors behind advanced and modular point-of-sale malware, known as Prilex, have reared their ugly head once again with new updates that allows block contactless payment transactions. Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky said it detected 3 versions of Prilex that are capable of targeting NFC-enabled credit cards, taking its criminal scheme to a notch higher. Having evolved out of ATM-focused malware into POS malware over the years, since going operational in 2014, the threat actor has steadily incorporated new features that are designed to facilitate credit card fraud, including a technique called ghost transaction. While contactless payments have taken off in a big way, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the underlying motive behind the new functionality is to disable the feature so as to force the user to insert the card into the PIN pad. To that end, the latest version of Prilex, which Kaspersky discovered in November of 2022, has been found to implement a rule-based logic to determine whether or not to capture credit card information alongside an option to block NFC-based transactions. This is due to the fact that NFC-based transactions often generate unique ID or card number valid for only one transaction. Should such an NFC-based transaction be detected and blocked by the malware installed on the infected POS terminal, the PIN reader displays a fake error message, "Contactless error, insert your card." This leads the victim to use the physical card by inserting it into the PIN pad reader, effectively permitting the threat actor to commit fraud. Another new feature adds the artifacts in this ability to filter credit cards by segments and craft rules tailored to these tiers. These rules can block NFC and capture card data only if the card is Black, Infinite, Corporate, or another tier with high transaction limit, which is much more attractive than standard credit cards with a low balance limit, the researcher said. Since transaction data generated during a contactless payment are useless from a cybercriminal's perspective, it's understandable that Prilex needs to force victims to insert the card into the infected POS terminal. So, as much as people worry about the wireless capture of NFC cards, actually more secure given that it's one-time use.
Interesting.
So if you have a terminal that gives that specific error, you may want to rethink what you're about to buy.
No kidding, man. That's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go on to our next one, which I believe is yours.
Mm-hmm. There's been a ransomware going around called ESXi ARGS that's been kind of nasty and exploits ESXi systems and what is believed to be the SLP port, although there's conflicting information about if you have that disabled or enabled, it doesn't matter, they'll still get it. Recently, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has released a recovery script for victims of ESXi ARGS ransomware variant that affected thousands of organizations worldwide this week. CISA's ESXi ARGS-recover tool is available for free on GitHub, and organizations can use it to attempt the recovery of configuration files on vulnerable VMware ESXi servers that the ransomware variant might have encrypted. Some organizations that use the tool have successfully recovered their encrypted files without having to pay a ransom, the agency noted. However, any cybersecurity team that plans to use the tool should first make sure that they understand how it works before attempting to recover files that ESXi ARGS might have encrypted, CISA cautioned. CISA recommends organizations impacted by the vulnerability evaluate the script and guidance provided in accompanying README file, determine if it's A, fit for their environment, it noted. ESXi ARGS is a ransomware variant of the France's Computer Emergency Response Team first spotted February 3rd, targeting VMware ESXi hypervisors worldwide. The malware exploits a 2-year-old and long-patched remote code execution vulnerability in Open Service Location Protocol, an ESXi service for resolving network addresses. So we always say about patching, 2 years is a little long of a patch cycle.
No kidding.
We may have had a few people that were potentially vulnerable to this at work, and we contact them and say, hey, why are these on the internet, for one? And two, you need to update these. And they came back with, well, we need new hardware, so we haven't been able to update.
Yeah.
Not an excuse, because if you're ransomware, you're going to need new hardware anyway.
Because, all right, it's been a few years since I've run ESXi. I know that there's only certain hardware that it runs on already, but a lot of these, you can still get these security patches and apply those up to a certain couple versions back without having to upgrade your hardware.
Correct.
Okay, so unless they're already in end-of-life versions, then they should probably be moving to newer hardware already, right?
Yeah, I think in this case, it was just they hadn't applied the patch yet, and there is a full newer version that they haven't gone to yet. They were also mentioning.
Gotcha. Okay. So any of the home labbers who are using ESXi, I'm hoping they're not exposing that to the internet, first off, and secondarily, go patch.
Well, small problem with that.
Okay.
There's a new version of it.
Okay.
And the recovery script may not work.
Uh-oh.
So the new ESXi ARGS ransomware attacks are now encrypting more extensive amounts of data, making it much harder, if not impossible, to recover encrypted VMware ESXi virtual machine. Last Friday, a massive and widespread automated ransomware attack encrypted over 3,000 internet-exposed VMware ESXi servers using the new ransomware. Preliminary reports indicated that devices were breached using the old VMware SLP vulnerabilities. However, some victims have stated that SLP was disabled on their device and were still breached and encrypted. When encrypting a device, an encrypt sh script looks for virtual machine files matching the following extensions: VMDK, VMX, VMXF, VMSD, VMSN, VSWP, VMSS, NVRAM, VMEM. For each of the that's found, the script checks the file size, and if it is smaller than 128 megabytes, it encrypts the whole file in 1 megabyte increments. However, for larger files, it would compare a size step, which would cause the encryptor to alternate between encrypting 1 megabyte of data and not encrypting chunks of data. The script uses the following formula, slightly modified for readability in the article, to determine what size step. In this case, it means that for a 4.5 gigabyte file, it would generate a size step of 45, causing the encryptor to alternate between encrypting 1 megabyte of the file, skipping 45 megabytes of the file. So as you can see, quite a bit of data remains unencrypted by the time it's finished encrypting a file. Then later, the second wave of the ransomware started today and includes a modified encryption routine that encrypts far more data in large files. Bleeping Computer first learned the second wave after an admin posted the ESXi ARG support topic stating that their server was encrypted and could not be recovered using the methods that had worked previously. After sharing the samples with Bleeping Computer, they noticed that the encryptor had not changed, but the script's size step routine had been taken out and simply set to 1 in the new version. This change is illustrated below in comparison to the original script. Ransomware expert Michael Gillespie told Bleeping Computer that the change causes the encryptor to alternate between encrypting 1 megabyte of data and skipping 1 megabyte of data. All files over 128 megabytes will now have 50% of their data encrypted, making them likely unrecoverable.
Oof.
Yeah, so CISA still recommends giving their script a try, but it may not work now. Get those servers behind management virtual or VPNs. That way you don't have to have them expose them.
Makes a lot of sense. Fantastic. So, rolling right into our next one then, which is This Week in Privacy or Lack Thereof. This one's fresh, hot off the press. We're reading this one from Dark Reading. That Reddit breached with stolen employee credentials. Reddit code, internal documents, dashboards, and business systems were compromised in a cyber attack on February 5th. It was announced that their internal systems were breached on February 5th as a result of an employee credential compromise. The company said that a sophisticated and highly targeted phishing attack was able to trick a single employee into giving up their login information. The cyber attacker then gained access to code and some internal data, including advertiser and employee information. Reddit user data was not affected, however, the company said. Based on several days of initial investigation by security, engineering, and data science and friends, we have no evidence to suggest that any of our non-public data has been accessed, or that Reddit's information has been published or distributed online. And their statement is pretty just straightforward there, saying what happened specifically. Wow, I clicked on an extra article and it's opening up a whole bunch of other fun stuff. In a phishing campaign, attackers sent out plausible sounding prompts pointing employees to a website that cloned the behavior of the intranet gateways in an attempt to steal credentials and second factor tokens. After successfully obtaining a single employee's credentials, they gained access to some of the internal docs. Let's see. Exposure included limited contact information for currently hundreds of companies, contacts, and employees, current and former, as well as limited advisor information. So I will say something that has come to my attention the last couple days. Between this and then a couple YouTube channels getting hacked, the multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication has been getting bypassed often, and it seems like at least on the YouTube side of the house, it's because when they did a phishing attack, they ended up stealing the cookies, and since everybody was logged in to they scraped all the open tabs, grabbed all the cookies for that, and then sent that over to the attacker, and then they are able to log in, change their two-factor authentication without having to re-authenticate, which is crazy to me. So two-factor authentication is a good thing, but it looks like it's only getting people so far at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what this login page looked like, given some of the recent attacks that I've seen. I wonder how sophisticated it actually was, or if they're just doing a little hand waving to say, "Oh yeah, this looked like an internal thing," versus, "Yeah, this is a super generic form on Google Forms."
right. That is true. I mean, everybody says it's highly technical, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that, we're into our next section, which is This Week in Security, and this is your article.
When it comes to cybersecurity, the Biden administration is getting much more aggressive. This one was kind of interesting. So, President Biden is about to approve a policy that goes much farther than any previous effort to protect private companies from malicious hackers and to retaliate against those hackers with our own cyber. The 35-page document titled National Cybersecurity Strategy differs from the dozen or so similar papers signed by presidents over the past quarter century in two significant ways. First, it imposes mandatory regulations on a wide swath of American industries. Second, it authorized U.S. defense, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies to go on the offensive, hacking into the computer networks of criminals and foreign governments in retaliation to or preempting their attacks on American networks. Our goal is to make malicious actors incapable of mounting sustained cyber-enabled campaigns that would threaten the national security or public safety of the United States, the document states in a 5-page section titled Disrupt and Dismantle Threat Activity. According to a draft exclusively viewed by Slate, in this case, the document had not yet been publicly released, though it will be after Biden signs it, an event anticipated sometime this month. Under the new strategy, the U.S. will disrupt and dismantle hostile networks as part of a persistent, continuous campaign. The campaign will be coordinated by the FBI National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, working in tandem with all relevant U.S. agencies. A systematic collaboration that has rarely been attempted and never before publicized. Private companies, both firms that are frequent targets of cyber attacks and firms that specialize in cybersecurity methods, will be full partners in the effort, both to alert the government task force of intrusions and to help repel them. In the past, many of these firms, especially in Silicon Valley, have been reluctant to be seen cooperating with the government on these issues. The new strategy, which was in the works for much of 2022 under the supervision of senior White House officials, stems from the growing recognition of two facts, which have long been obvious to specialists. First, mere guidelines on cybersecurity, which Washington previously allowed private companies to follow voluntarily, have for the most part failed to block major intrusions by foreign governments or cyber criminals. Second, purely defensive measures have also had limited impact, as a clever hacker will eventually find a way around them. The U.S. has conducted cyber offensive operations for many decades. Bill Clinton was the first president to acknowledge this fact publicly. In 2012, Barack Obama issued President Policy Directive Number 20, which established strict controls, including that the president's explicit permission was needed for all cyber offensive operations. Classified top secret, it was one of the many documents leaked by Edward Snowden. In 2018, President Trump signed National Security President Memorandum Number 13, which loosened those controls, giving defense and intelligence agencies enormous leeway to mount offensive campaigns themselves. So it goes into more detail, but we have seen some of this, where we'll hear about the FBI getting permission from the court system to be able to start to attack ransomware gangs in order to disrupt their networks and attempt to recover the recovery keys and distribute those to those that have been affected. I think we're going to see some more things, including things that we may not hear about for a couple years that are going to be happening.
Right. So on one hand, this is super interesting because the whole hackback idea has been something that has been talked about, but not smiled upon necessarily. As when you're talking about like corporations and such, but now if the U.S. government is saying that they're officially going to have a stance on this, and It's gonna be interesting because
Mm-hmm.
online attribution is hard, right, Digital?
Mm-hmm. I think that's why they're specifically having them report it to the FBI, and then the government takes over at that point if there's going to be a hackback.
Yeah. I am very curious to continue to watch this closely because I could see this as a okay. Everybody's supposed to be defending their nation, making sure that nobody's attacking it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the attribution online is hard. So, and then what else is also caught into that net? Because we've seen so many other times that they've overreached with their abilities on this. So, I'm cautiously optimistic here. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of talks about this at both DEF CON now and in the future. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it'll make for interesting times moving forward. Anything else that you wanted to add to the article?
Nope.
Cool. Let's talk about Android just for a minute here. We've got a quick article from Security Week talking about Google describes privacy security improvements in Android 14. So, Google has released their first Android 14 developer preview and has announced some of the security improvements the platform update will include. It's expected to arrive on devices sometime in fall, with Android 14 bringing new features and APIs, as well as behavioral changes that might impact applications. The purpose of the developer preview is to help application developers learn about these changes to test their applications for compatibility issues. One of the security enhancements in the platform update is to is related to the runtime receivers and build changes introduced in Android 13. When Google instructed developers to specify whether their application's registered broadcast receiver should be visible to other apps on the device. Before Android 13, any application could send unprotected broadcasts to dynamically registered receivers that were not protected by signature permission. To help prevent or to help protect apps from security vulnerabilities, apps and services that target Android 14 use context registered receivers that are required to specify a flag to indicate whether or not the receiver should be exported to all the other apps on the device. Android 14 is also an attempt to protect applications from malicious software that might intercept intents by restricting apps by sending intents internally that do not specify a package. Additionally, apps can now send implicit intents to export components only and must either use an explicit intent to deliver an unexported component or mark the component as exported. To prevent malicious use of the dynamic code loading, or DCL, applications built for Android 14 will have to mark dynamically loaded files as read only, according to Google. Developers should only avoid dynamic loading code, as this exposes applications to code injections or code tampering. Because of some malware versions using API level 22 to avoid runtime permissions model introduced in Android 6.0, Android 14 will prevent the installation of applications that target an API lower than 23. However, applications with target SDK versions lower than 23 will remain installed. Android 14 also arrives with a credential manager, a new Jetpack API that includes support for multiple sign-in methods, including federated sign-in solutions and passkeys, along with other classic username and password pair. It's currently in alpha, and Credential Manager allows users to create passkeys and to save them to the Google Password Manager for passwordless authentication across devices in both Android and Chrome. All right. The only other things, I didn't see any miscellaneous stories this week. I did see, however, that Bruce Schneier came out with a new book called A Hacker's Mind: How the Powerful Bend Society's Rules and How to Bend Them Back. This came out on February 7th, so just a couple days since our recording. and it looks like it's available for hardcover, ebook, audiobook, and signed copies as well. So I've listened to a couple of his audiobooks. I have not listened to this newest one yet. Have you listened to any of his yet?
I have not.
Okay. Cool deal. All right, and then you want to talk about the other book that came out recently?
Yeah, so we've mentioned it a few times, but Critical Mass by Daniel Suarez is out now. This one's a sequel to Delta V, and it still has Jeff Garner doing the audiobook. It's as great as ever. I did reach the part where you shared on his Twitter the one phrase that he was trying to pronounce and was having some difficulty with.
Nice.
So I got to hear the official version of that.
Beautiful. I have not got to start listening to this. This came out on the day that I started my travels for for the work travel, and instead of listening to this, Squatchy and I caught up, and it seems like we had not talked in a long time. So we were just chatting. Then the wife's like, "Hey, I want to listen to it with you, so don't listen ahead yet." I'm like, "Okay, it's killing me though. Come on, Smalls." So definitely looking forward to it.
I'm on chapter 35 of 30, or yeah, 35 of 47.
Ooh, all right. Good deal. Yeah, so since I was down and out, I'm like, okay, if I can't listen to the newest one with Critical Mass, let me go re-listen to Delta V. So I've got Delta V down, so now it's just, let's get to Critical Mass now. Let's go.
Yeah, I just had re-listened to Delta V not long ago, so it was already fairly fresh in my mind.
Nice. Good deal. All right, anything else that you want to talk about? Projects that you're working on or things that you're doing?
Pretty much the moving's the big thing right now, so getting everything packed up and ready to get over in as few trips as possible.
Nice. You think you'll be able to get it all in a car trip, or you'll have to rent something?
No.
Oh no. Okay.
It'll take couple car trips on just stuff, and then I'll have to find it, either rent a truck or see if someone has a truck that I can borrow to get furniture.
Nice. Okay. Good deal. Well, good luck with it. If I wasn't over here on this side of the coast, I'd totally offer to say, hey, I can come lend you a hand, bud.
That's one of the kind of things that has felt weird, like how many people that have offered help, even if like they couldn't be here. I'd be like, I'd help if I could have been there.
Right. You got people from the hackerspace, though, that should be able to jump in, so...
Yeah, the one person's complaining I haven't told her what I need because she wants to buy like a gift basket of things.
Right. I mean, it's a common thing for your first apartment or your first house. I mean, you need a housewarming gift or like a registry, man.
I'm used to just going and getting stuff on my own, so I don't think about it. I just go get it.
Right. I get you. Well, congratulations on it, and by the next time, hey, we'll get to be recording from your new location.
We'll see how the internet installation goes on Wednesday.
Is it fiber, cable, or DSL?
Fiber.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, when I called the power company to switch over the electricity, they then sent me to a second department that's all about just trying to sell you ads. And the first one, they ask if you have your internet set up, and then they ask what it is and how much the speed is. So, of course, I say it's fiber at 300 at this price. Like, oh, well, we have a deal through Comcast. I'm like, I'm not interested. But you will get 400. I'm not interested. It's $5 cheaper per month. I'm not interested.
I had never experienced that either until I bought the house, and I had already set up the internet as well, set up everything else, and I think the last one was either gas or electric. And same situation. I'm like, yeah, nah, we're good. Although
Verizon's
go ahead.
Not much better, but it's better enough to avoid Comcast.
Yeah. Verizon only offers, or Verizon bought Frontier in my area, and it's all trash.
It's weird.
What?
Shouldn't it be the other way around?
You're saying...
Because everything over this way, Verizon sold all their equipment to Frontier.
Oh,
so
really?
You're saying they had Frontier on your side and they sold it to Verizon?
Okay, no, so I take that back. I absolutely reversed that.
Okay.
I'm just gonna blame COVID brain. Uh, yeah, they only had Verizon phone line in town. Then Frontier came and is like, oh, we'll take over everything. Okay, great. Is the service gonna improve? No. Are you gonna be able to do any better speeds? No. Okay, cool.
Yeah, everything I've heard is if you had Frontier before, it's not bad. Like if they were already in your area. But if
Mm,
they took over Verizon's equipment, it's been terrible.
yeah, I can confirm over here on the West Coast. On a positive note, though, there is a smaller group that's going through, and since I live in kind of a rural area, there is an ISP that's rolling out fiber, and it's hella cheap to where comparatively to the cable option. So I put my order in last month for our hackerspace because I rented a space at this point, and we're meeting physically in person again, which is awesome. We've had our second meeting, and this next week we're getting fiber installed in the hackerspace. So
Nice.
I'm like, ooh, ooh. The options were okay. The prices were delicious. I will say, if you're residential and you're in the area, you get a gig down, gig up, unlimited data cap for $99, or you can get
Nice.
the 300 megabyte down, uh, 30 megabyte up for like 35. For residential, it's just fine. We're renting in an industrial area though, and it's for the hackerspace, which is an LLC, which is a nonprofit. So I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna have to do the business one then. So we're getting 300 down, 300 up, unlimited data cap for about the same, but that's still quadruple the speed that the cable company would offer. But they also want us to tear up the road and run the cable 500 feet away versus, so that was like $10,000 worth of um, work that needs to be done to run the cable across versus fiber is literally right at the corner of the building. They just want us to punch a hole in and we can provide our own equipment. So I'm like, yes, please, and thank you. So bought a bunch of Ubiquity gear. Instead of doing the Protectly box, I'm actually trying out the Zoba, uh, like Raspberry Pi alternative board. That's an x86. Um, no, it's Zoma, Zoma board, and they come in like 3 or 4 different types. But it's an x86 box. You've got 2 gigs of RAM. I think it's 16 gigs internal storage, and then you've got full SATA plugs and such. So I've got all that filmed. I've got all that set up to where I've got the Raspberry Pi, the Zoma board, an access point, everything set up to where we should be able to just literally plug and play this thing. And one thing I'll need to find out now that I'm thinking about it is if they're providing a fiber modem or not, because they didn't say on that. And I've got about a handful of days, so I've got something on my to-do list. Yay! Everything else is ready though to be plug and play, which is great. So I'm super excited for that. So fiber all around.
Nice.
Alrighty then. I think that pretty much calls it for our meeting tonight.
Okay.
Cool deal. So you can find us, or we're typically doing this on Thursday nights live. Otherwise, you can go find us on your different podcasting sites on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and such. If you want to reach out to us individually, you can find me on Twitter at Gator, GATER_bite, or on defcon.social at the same digital.
And Twitter and the defcon.social Mastodon at digital_tinker.
All right. We will see you same bat time, same bat station next week.
See you then.
Bye.